All right, and welcome to the Zone Live. This is playoff edition number 2. We're live in the Longview News Journal studio, worldwide headquarters on the 3rd floor of the Longview News Journal. To my left, as usual, Hayden Henry. To my right, Brandon Ogden. We're going to talk football, but before we start on the football, real quick shout out to the White Oak Lady Neck volleyball team. White Oak has made it to the state tournament for the 8th time in school history, for the 5th time in 6 years. Is that right? Hayden will be there tomorrow to cover them. They play at 11:30 in Garland. Sorry, my bad. 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock.
Getting at 7 in the morning.
I've already jumped ahead to the state championship game. If they win tomorrow, they'll play in the state championship game at 11:30 Saturday. So good luck to the Lady Necks. Coach Nicole Thorne's done a great job out there with an already great program. So wish them a lot of luck. And now some football, and we're going to jumble it up a little bit this week. Instead of jumping into the Friday games, we're going to go straight to the to one of the big Saturday matchups. And of course, the Longview Lobos. Yeah, and we're fortunate, I guess, to be still talking about the Lobos this week after last week. It was a great game. We'll let Hayden talk a little bit about that, but talk about a contrast in programs. Longview will play Mansfield Lake Ridge. Games at 3 o'clock Saturday at Rose Stadium in Tyler, and this is Longview's 40th playoff appearance, 14th straight year to make the playoffs, and Hayden was just telling me 9th straight year to make it to at least the area round. And Mansfield Lake Ridge, this is the 3rd year of the program overall, first playoff appearance. Contrasting programs, but you got to throw all that out the window. You got to play the game Saturday. Hayden, you were there. Squeaked one out against Lufkin. Tell us a little bit about the Lobos.
Wild game. Everyone's still talking about it. Last week I was at the grocery store the other night, and someone approached me out of nowhere. I was getting some bread and milk. So how about those Lobos? And it was wild, 28-0. So I saw some Lobo fans starting to leave. It was that that bad early on for them, but they turned around. Biggest comeback in school history. Never come back from 4 scores like that. Just a dramatic game, one of the best games I've ever had to cover. It's hard to do that with Justice. We talked about that Friday night when I got back. Overcame a lot. A lot of injuries, which I'll have a full recap on that going forward into this week on etvarsity.com later tonight or in the morning. It really started with Desmond Chumley, just a career game, one yard short of setting us a game.
School record.
Yeah, school record for passing yards in a game, 1 yard. Made some things happen with his legs. Lobos really opened the playbook a lot last week. I've seen throughout practice they're working on these things. Went through district, kind of kept it base. And King said they loaded the gun and had to use every single bullet in that one. Now they go to face Lake Ridge. Started out 0-10 their first season, won a couple last year, and have won 5 of 7 heading in. Got a great dual threat quarterback that's thrown for over 1,600 yards, rushed for 945 yards, and I think like Brandon said, Desmond Chumley's almost played in as many games as a Lobo quarterback as Lake Ridge has played as a program.
Right.
They're going to need him to play like that again, like he did last Saturday back in Tyler.
Absolutely. I think the thing that jumped out at me about this game last week, and digging through your story and some information. Obviously you had Des Chumley having a big game. They're going to need that from him, down the road. They really threw their tight ends a lot last week. Jordan White had no catches leading into the game. He caught 5 for 83 yards and a touchdown. Then they had another tight end with a couple of catches. Tyler Miller did his normal stuff. Jamichael Hasty, second game back, his most playing time. He did his. I just think the Lobos are going to need all of those weapons from here on out, and to have those now at their disposal, to know that they can do those things. The weather's supposed to be bad Saturday, so obviously running the football is still going to be bread and butter. Right. But to have all those, what you said, have all those bullets in the gun and ready to go. This is big for Longview.
Yeah. Tight end is an area that's an unsung hero, but a key part in the Lobo offense, much like the fullback, which they played last week without a fullback. Right. Marquise Hunter was out. Austin Moore's been out the entire season. Didn't have sophomore Travian Webster, so it was the tight ends who. Emmanuel Gordon, he came into the game, with the longest play from scrimmage for the Lobos. He still has that with a big 77-yard reception last week. Jordan White, a junior, who they say was one of the fastest kids on the team, without not counting Hasty on that, but had the crucial 2-point conversion. Marquise Hunter still injured a little bit. He's kind of day-to-day. It'll be a great thing to have him back on Saturday. But, like you said, Desmond comes back to him, play like the career that he's had.
I feel like the Longview moves on in this one, but it won't be easy. I mean, we talked about last week was the big test for him early. This one won't be easy. It sounds like we have a question.
Earlier this week, we had a Facebook follower on ET Varsity ask us about injuries for Longview.
Yeah. Like I said, they did, I think, had 5 guys go down and get helped off the field on Saturday. Nothing crucial. They were all practicing earlier in the week in some role. Marquise, like I said, had an ankle injury, didn't play last week, was on crutches last week. He was out in shorts and a helmet, moving around yesterday, heading out there as soon as we wrap here to get the final scoop. So check etvarsity.com for that heading in.
Okay. Let's move on to, we're going to go on back to some Friday games, and then we'll come back and do the other 3 Saturday games. But, let's jump into a few here. Dallas South Oak Cliff against Marshall. It's a 7:30 game at Rose Stadium. Marshall 7-4, South Oak Cliff 8-3. Brandon and I were discussing this game yesterday, and we kind of had different opinions. I feel like Marshall can win this game, but I mean this could be a really troublesome game for them.
Well, then, and when I started looking at South Oak Cliff's schedule, they got 3 losses. 2 of those came to Cedar Hill and DeSoto, and I started thinking, oh wait, this team. But Marshall, they've been playing real well as of late, and they really impressed last week against Nacogdoches and put over 60 points. That offense, when it gets going, Justin Hart, Cameron Haller, and all those weapons. It's if that defense can make some stops. And last week they gave up a lot of points, but they put up enough. This week I think they're going to make some big defensive plays in order to have a chance against South Oak Cliff.
Exactly. Another game on Friday, El Campo 10-1 against 6-5 Carthage team. That's 7:30 in New Caney. You mentioned defense. Carthage defense last week. This has been I won't say horrible is not the right word, but this has been a really trouble spot for Carthage all year. They've scored points all year long. They've had trouble stopping anybody, and then they go out and throw a shutout in the first round of the playoffs.
And then they scored 10 early, and I was like, oh, they're about to score a lot, and then they didn't score the rest of the game and ended 10-0, and I was like, I wasn't expecting that.
Exactly.
LCM finished with, I think, just over 50 yards rushing in the game. And El Campo comes in and got a 1,500-yard rusher, and then another one that's approaching 1,000 yards. Blissett passed for 223 yards. Another thing that stood out to me about El Campo, which is a rematch from 2011 when El Campo kind of stunned them. I think it was 29-25 in the state semifinals. But El Campo, the Wrightsburgs, got the Ball Hawks with 4 of them with at least 3 interceptions. So that'll be a key area for sure.
Absolutely, and Carthage has got to be super confident heading into this game. The way they played defense last week. Talk about the next 2 games kind of together because this one, this is the one everybody's looking for. You've got Gilmer and Waco Connolly. They're playing 7:30 Friday at Mesquite Hamby, and you have Gladewater and Fairfield 7:30 Friday at Lobo Stadium in Longview. Guys, we're talking about next week. Everybody's talking about next week a possible Gilmer-Gladewater matchup. I know that the coaches are probably hoping that their kids aren't. And it's hard not to do. You're talking about high school kids. It's hard not to look ahead. But I'll be honest, don't know a lot about Waco Connolly other than stats. I know what Gilmer does. I fully expect them to go out and win this ball game. Gladewater and Fairfield, I think Gladewater is definitely a favorite in this game. Fairfield's been there. Fairfield was 15-1 last year, played for a state championship, so not going to be an easy game for the Bears. What do you? I mean, Gilmer. You've both seen Gilmer this year. I know. Have you seen Gladewater yet?
Yeah, last week.
And you haven't
I haven't seen him
Gladewater.
this year except in practice.
But we know all about these 2 teams. What do you think is going to be the key for? We'll start with Gilmer. What's the key for Gilmer this week?
I mean, just keep it rolling. Keep it rolling. Get up to an early start. I think it's going to be a big one for sure.
And Gladewater, they do so many things well.
And if Gladewater, they're a top team, if they get ahead on you, the way they run the ball with so many different guys, they're hard to come back against. And then, also with that defensive front they got. So, again, to beat Gladewater, Fairfield's going to have to get up on them and control, make Gladewater do some different things. Because if Gladewater gets ahead and can run with all those 20 running backs, how many they have, it gets kind of dangerous zone for the other team.
We saw Gerald Polk had a big game last week. I think set season highs for the Bears and total yards and touchdowns against Nevada Community, who threw the ball 43 times. I wasn't a big fan of them last week, but they're facing Fairfield, who's thrown for over 1,700 yards. So that kind of a good tune-up to get ready to defend. Secondary impressed me last week. For Fairfield, they got 83 tackles for loss, 32 sacks. So we talk about the Bears' backs that are doing all this, but it really starts up front with those guys, and this is going to be a big one for that. Big key area for that.
Okay. All right, moving on a little bit, we have, again, some games we could talk about as a down-the-road team. Hugh Springs, 8-3 against Howe, 6-5, and that's 7:30 in Van. And then Wascom and Leonard, 7:30 in Mount Pleasant. The two winners from that meet, am I correct? The next week. So, again, one of those would be a huge East Texas matchup if these teams get this week. We know what Hugh Springs does. They love to run the football. I think in the regular season they threw 53 passes. So they're going to run the football and play defense. We know that. Wascom,
Same thing.
same thing. Yeah, they're going to run the football. They're going to play defense. They've got so many weapons. To me, they are the minus the pass. I mean, they can throw the football, but when you talk about weapons, we talk about athletes. They remind me of Gilmer. I mean, they've got kids that have really great numbers, despite the fact that they're not playing complete football games because they're so far ahead of everybody. So, those two could possibly meet down the road. They've got to get past this week though.
Well, and then how I was exchanging emails with the Sherman guy from the Sherman paper earlier, and they cover four of the teams that our teams play this week, and how he said they run the wing tee. They got a couple kids with some impressive numbers, but Leonard, who Wascom plays, they have some impressive numbers from their kids, and they're 9-1. Right. So Wascom's 10-1. This it's not a pushover game for Wascom. And so and Wascom, a team who hasn't been tested in a long time, they if they get tested, it'll be interesting to see how they respond.
Absolutely. Hayden, you know what the wing tee is?
Old school.
The old school. You can't get that at Buffalo Wild Wings. So don't even go order. All right, moving on a little bit. A couple more Friday games. Union Grove and Lovelady. The Lions went 10-0 in the regular season. Everybody knows that story. Last year made the playoffs for the first time since 1968. This year, now they're gunning for a playoff win. I mean, that's Coach Roger Adams is doing a great job out there. They had a bye last week. I've seen that go good and bad. I've seen you got that momentum going. You want to keep it going, but any injuries they might have had and the chance to heal that up could be a big thing.
Well, I talked to Coach Adams, the Saturday after that regular season finale. I talked to him for our playoff story, and I asked him about the bye, and he said, that was the good thing. They had some bumps and bruises, especially that last game they played against Harleton, which was a physical game. And the other thing is, having that bye, they got to go see Lovelady last week. He got to go see him in person. Most time in football, head coach don't get to go scout. You're just going from what your assistants tell you. Exactly. He actually got to go see him, so that should help in the preparation for a good Lovelady program.
Absolutely. A couple other games on Fridays. Alto 9-0 against Ore City 9-2. Alto lost a game early in the season to Weather, and they had a bye, so that's why they've got 9 wins. Good football team. Great quarterback. Ore City, again, great story there in East Texas that folks know about and have been following. They've got a chance to tie the all-time school record for wins in a season if they get one more. That was set in 1994. This is just a good solid football team. They play. Those 2 losses came to 2 really good district teams. Like to see what Ore City can do in this round of the playoffs.
And that was probably the biggest surprise for me last week. Not that Ore City won, but they beat Shelbyville 46-0. I've been hearing about Shelbyville all year. They didn't lose to the last game against West Sabine, and everybody was talking about Shelbyville. West Sabine's really good. Shelbyville's gonna make a deep run, and Ore City just put it on them early, forced 9 fumbles, and I think 7 or 8 were lost. So it was that was a big key there, and Ore City. Maybe they can pull off another little, I guess we say, quote-unquote, shocker here against Alto.
There you go. All right, last game on Friday that we're going to talk about West Sabine and Carlisle. Just an 8-2 West Sabine team, a 9-2 Carlisle team. Just forwarded some stats to Brandon, the quarterback for West Sabine, Rashad Williams. Yeah. Just phenomenal numbers. But I was just typing in numbers for Carlisle for some All-State nominations. You got Bryce McGowan, who just maybe one of the top athletes in East Texas. You'd have to put him up there, and great kicker, and and punter. The kid does the punting and kicking, and his name escapes me. I can't even.
Angel Garza.
Angel Garza, thank you. Just phenomenal numbers for any classification. So hey, if it comes down to special teams, I like Carlisle's chances in that one. But those are our Friday games. Real quickly, I'm not sure how much time we have, but real quickly on some Saturday games now that we want to touch on Henderson and West Columbia. Got a 9-2 Henderson team, 10-1 West Columbia. And they're playing Saturday at 2 at New Caney. And Henderson, I think Hayden mentioned it last week when we talked about Henderson kind of got overlooked this year a little bit when everybody was talking about the district that they play in, and you can't take 9-2 lightly.
Yep, good win last week heading into this. And one thing we haven't mentioned, we're going to knock on wood, is the weather is not looking good for Saturday at all. It's going to be a rainy one. So, getting things going on the ground for all 4 of these games is going to be crucial.
Absolutely. And a couple other games, and when we got Cold Spring Oakhurst against Tatum. That's a 9-2 team against a 6-5 Tatum team. That's 6 o'clock Saturday at A. Martin Stadium in Lufkin. Tatum guys, I mean, we mentioned a couple of teams last week that we thought might be those teams that could get on a roll in the playoffs. You look at what Tatum did last week against Bullard. This could be a team to keep up with for a while. It should be a good one. And then the last game we'll mention, SNS consolidated 5-6 against an 8-3 Elysian Fields team. Game's 3:30 Saturday in Van. Yeah, Elysian Fields just always been a solid program over there, and really doing some good things. So, guys, a lot of action, a lot of great games Friday and Saturday. We'll have updates throughout on Twitter. We'll have information on etvarsity.com. We'll have our Facebook page is always going. Check out those scores for scores and updates throughout the night, and be sure and pick up the paper on Saturday and Sunday this week, and get your playoff information. So we appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next week at this time about 5:30 on Wednesday.